Can everybody in Minnesota, in North Minneapolis, South Minneapolis, St. Paul is transfixed, I would say, is the right word about the unfortunate chain of events going on around policing. The unfortunate death of Amir um, on last Wednesday, Amir Locke, shot by Minneapolis police in downtown Minneapolis. That as a sequel to a crime incident, a murder in St. Paul, that led to the investigation. That also around and following the shooting death of one young man at a Richfield High School. Everybody is kind of in a state of heightened tension right now. And if you're watching or listening and want to weigh in on your thoughts, your feelings, your fears, you can reach out to us while we're on air today here at Cafe I by going to our Facebook page, Inside News, Facebook, or going to Black Press USA, Facebook Black Press USA. Well, let me begin by talking to a couple of people that have a unique perspective and responsibility to serve our community. We have Representative Rita Moran and Representative Ryan Winkler. Both are representing districts, both in St. Paul and Minneapolis. Both are candidates for the county board in their respective counties. Rita Moran in Ramsey County in St. Paul, Ryan Winkler in Hennepin County in Minneapolis. Ryan, let me go to you first. Welcome and good afternoon. Tell me why you're running for the county board here in Hennepin County.
Well, first, thank you for having me, Al. I'm running for county attorney.
Excuse me.
That is a lot of people make because they don't always listen. It's county government is not always the first place people think of. I'm running for county attorney because we need leadership in this time to address a cycle of violence that is harming too many people. And we're seeing that, as you just laid it in so clearly, with multiple murders, a police killing of a person who had nothing to do with either of those murders, law enforcement that is not well trusted in certain communities and in certain cities, and the need yet to find a way forward for our law enforcement system to help keep our communities safe. There's no fast action to get us out of that, but it does take deep engagement. It requires us to find the best resources and people who are doing good things, and good things are happening all over our communities in the short term, and bring those resources and those people to the fore and help them be leaders. And it also requires us to look long term at the economic and financial disadvantage that communities have been left with intentionally in many cases. We have to look at mental health and our ability to address chemical dependency and trauma. In the long run, those are vital investments. But at this present time, we have to find a way to step in and stop a cycle of violence that is unacceptable. I just came from an event right now with the family of Amir Locke, and no family should have to go through what they're going through, and none of the families that we've talked about should have to go through this. We need to stop it, and I want to help be part of that solution.
I apologize for calling your candidacy for the county board, because I've got it right here, looking at it. And, I think that like a lot of us, I'm a little bit discombobulated right now, overwhelmed by all the things that are going on. And I'm focused on, what we can do as residents, as citizens, as voters, and as candidates to serve our community. So apologies, first of all, and let me restate, thank you for being here as a candidate for Hennepin County Attorney. And just briefly, then going from a legislator to a county attorney, how is that decision made? And how much more impact do you think you can have personally on the affairs, the lives of residents of our city, of our community, of our county?
Well, as a legislative leader, I have an opportunity to have a broad impact across the state. As county attorney, what excites me is the opportunity to have a direct impact in people's lives. That it is really down to individuals and their families and their communities and the kind of lives that we are allowing people to live and the kind of opportunities we're creating. And public safety is essential for that. I think that we've had a lack of strong leadership on public safety in this community. And what I have identified from my perspective is a lot of different people trying to do a lot of good things, but a lack of coordination, a lack of bringing people together and solving problems together, problems that can be solved because we've created them. That means we can solve them. And as a legislative leader, finding a way to bring the right people together to address the problems and figure out how to get past ego and different interests and still package something together is what I've done. And that's why I think those are the skills I think are needed in the next county attorney.
And you've been the majority leader in the legislature. Talk about that. What experience brings you as the legislative leader?
Well, as I mentioned, we have a lot of people with a lot of different points of view and a lot of different sets of priorities. In the Minnesota House, we have a very narrow Democratic majority, and we have people who represent from the Iron Range and the far north of Minnesota through Minneapolis, St. Paul, through the suburbs, exurbs, and all the way down to southern Minnesota. And to keep a team like that together and functioning and trying to make progress is the job. I'm pretty proud that we've been able to do that in partnership with the Speaker, Melissa Hortman, and with the chair of our Ways and Means Committee, Rena Moran. We've been able to keep this group of people with a lot of different priorities functioning together and coming together around problem solving. And that's just our side. Then we have Republicans who control the Minnesota Senate, and that's a whole nother set of interests and outlook that we have to figure out how to accommodate in order to make progress happen. And I think we need more of that in the law enforcement side in this community, and that's what I'm trying to bring.
Go back, if you would, Ryan Winkler, about your assessment of how we failed in the county attorney's office. What motivates you to believe that you can provide better leadership, better service to the residents of Hennepin County as the county attorney?
Well, I think it starts with engagement and relationships. I think that there is no way to understand how to better serve a community without showing up, without listening, and then being accountable for what you said you were going to do. And that builds trust. But trust is not automatic. Trust is something that is earned. And there's no way to say that I know what's right for North Minneapolis without people in North Minneapolis telling me what they need. There's no way for me to say, here's the right policy, unless I am involving people who are affected by that policy in the decision making. And I don't think there's been much of any of that in the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. One small example, this is, obviously the county attorney prosecutes drug crimes or property crimes and violent crimes. That's not the only kind of crimes that are being committed in Hennepin County. White collar crime happens. Workers get trafficked for greedy employers. Northern Metals has been falsifying records about its activities. That's a crime. So what are we looking for? Are we providing a value to the community? Are we listening to people when they say that Northern Metals is a problem and what can you do to solve it? Doesn't mean the county attorney will always have the answer, but the county attorney should at least be there to listen and figure out what the community needs and try to identify resources that will help. It's the same thing we could give you a lot of examples of that, but it is foundationally about building trust, which comes from relationships and accountability. And that's what I would want to do.
Between now and election, what are the steps? How does your campaign plan to execute your attempt to achieve successful election?
Well, it's a nonpartisan race. I think that's an important thing for people to understand. You're not voting for a Democrat or a Republican on the ballot in November. It just has two names. And it's the same thing with the primary. There's a primary in August where there could be any number of candidates on the ballot. The top two vote getters will go on to the general election. So it's really more about getting to know what the candidate stands for, what their record is, what their leadership style is, and then figuring out if that's the right person to fill the role. And so my campaign will be focused on reaching as many people in Hennepin County as I possibly can to talk about public safety, to listen, and to figure out where we can go forward together. And I think the campaign should reflect how you're going to govern. I am going to be active in every community in Hennepin County. I am going to be listening, and I'm going to have my agenda representing what I'm hearing. And I think you'll see that not only in this campaign, but in my work at the legislature too.
What's your background, Ryan Winkler? Where are you from? Are you native of Minneapolis, St. Paul?
No,
And what's your training?
yeah. So I was born and raised in Bemidji. So I'm a small town northern Minnesota product. Moved to Minneapolis in 1998, I guess it would be, and currently live in Golden Valley and spent a brief time living in St. Louis Park. So I've been in or around Minneapolis for quite some time. My first work out of law school was working with the Phillips Partnership, which was a public-private effort to address housing, public safety, and jobs, and a number of other challenges that the Phillips neighborhood was facing, which was coming out after the Murderapolis days. And so my first work as a lawyer was helping communities be successful by, again, it was engagement and looking at the resources available from the public and private sector to try to help. In so many ways, we're right back to where we were before. We took our eye off the ball. We let a trend towards low crime overall distract us from the fact that there was still plenty of crime and plenty of disinvestment in neighborhoods and in communities of color, for Black Minnesotans especially, and we just allowed it to get worse in many ways. And so I think my background as a lawyer is mostly on the business side, but my first training as I came out of law school was in helping communities assemble the resources needed to bring crime down and bring opportunities up.
I want to shift to Representative Rena Moran, and if you've got the time, please hang on, because I want to talk to both of you about the current state of affairs, about the Amir Locke situation and other things like that, to have that conversation. Representative Rena Moran, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, Al. I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing well. Like I said, a little bit discombobulated. I'm overwhelmed,
Yeah.
in some ways angry, in some ways disheartened, but ultimately I'm an optimist and positive. I think that the pain of the moment is part of what the community and society sort of must go through to discover our best selves. This is a moment that puts us all to the test. Do we really believe in each other, in humanity, in the potential of ourselves to govern ourselves in a way that's equitable, that's fair? Can we live up to the principles and the promise of democracy? I believe that we can. I believe that a strategy that is focused, hopeful, and peaceful at its core is a strategy that we can nurture, implement, and sort of almost oxymoron in terms of terms, wage war against ignorance, war against deception, war against the arrogance and contempt that so many of our institutions have both created and maintained to serve the interest of the few and against the interest of the many, and particularly the interest of Black and brown people, and against the persons, the black and brown body. So that's kind of my big picture. You asked me the question.
I did.
That's
I know. Yeah.
that's a big answer. So let me
Yeah.
ask you the same question. How do you feel, and what are you doing?
You know, I wrote down when you opened up, you said, what are your thoughts, feelings, and fears?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that just really said it all. Because I think, like you, I'm in that same place, struggling with Amir Locke, you know, struggling with what we over the last 2 years alone, just right here in our state, you know, and continues to happen with the trauma on top of the trauma that we continue to experience. We experience as individuals, we experience as mothers and fathers. You know, we fear about what this look like for our children, and Lord knows our grandkids. And so I am full of so many of those emotions. On, you know, after the Amir Locke, you know, murder, it was, you know, it's been a part of the United Black Legislative Caucus. And each one of us was like full of so much emotions, from anger, from fear, from being disheartened, that And we knew, just from listening to our community and folks in the community, that they too were feeling that way, right? We don't know what we're feeling so much. And what do we do with all that we're feeling? And so we immediately said, well, you know what, we have to create a space as Black legislators to bring communities together, to just maybe sit in a space, just sit there. For some people, just being quiet. For some, it's just to share. It's, to find these solutions. But how do we come together collectively, to help us deal with the trauma that we're dealing with? Say it out loud, because sometimes you just have to say things out loud. But also think about, how do we as a collective come together for solutions to help each other heal, to help each other go through the pain that we're going through, but also within all of that, to realize that we are not just individuals, we are a community of families. And how do we deal with this trauma that continues to inundate our hearts and our minds and our feelings and fears and our thoughts?
You, like Representative Winkler, have decided to leave the House of Representatives. I think that's the right way to say that. At least you have decided to throw your hat in the ring for a county position. You're running for county commissioner in Ramsey County District 4. That's a seat being vacated as announced by Commissioner Tony Carter. So talk about that. What made you decide to transition? What can you do differently in the county than you are doing now as a leader of the BIPOC unity group in the legislature and beyond?
So let me just start off by saying this, that every single day, even today, I've been in the legislature. I'm going to my 12th year, my 6th term. And every day I wake up recognizing and know what the honor and privilege it is to be representing my district at the Capitol, right? I have had the opportunity to do some really good work. I have had the opportunity to build some great relationships on both sides of the aisle. I have had the wonderful, wonderful opportunity of bringing the community into that Capitol, to get uncomfortable, to get comfortable. And that is what I cherish the most, of helping a community of people, where in St. Paul, the Capitol is less than 1 mile from our home, but sometimes we don't even see it, right? We have to see it, because what is happening in our community impacts the decisions that we make at the Capitol. So let me just say that it's been awesome, right? In so many ways, but also in a big way, we don't get good things done. Good things doesn't happen because politics shows up. It just does. It is like a political beast there. It just shows up. We are the only state in the country to have a divided legislature, which means that anything we want to do that needs to happen has to be negotiated with Republicans who don't see the world the way we see it. And so, when I heard that Commissioner Tony Carter, who has served us well here in District 4, had decided to retire, and after a couple of days, because it wasn't something I took lightly and automatically said, okay, we're going to do it. I'm going to do this. It took some good reflections, self-reflections, me talking to other people, and coming to this conclusion that, yes, a lot of the work that I do at the Capitol is county stuff. And being able to take my work, my experience, my expertise from the Capitol and bring it local in the county in which I live, I got excited about that. I mean, I got really, really excited to be able to do this work locally, right here, connected to the people, where I can be the most impactful. And so I'm excited about this possibility. And the more that I thought about it, Al, I thought to myself, I cannot let a moment like this pass by. And so here I am. Al, you muted.
Muted.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I want to say that I thank you both for being here today We do conversations with Al McFarlane 5 days a week. Every Monday is our particular focus on community and civic engagement. And what we did in the prior election cycle is invite candidates for office in Minneapolis and St. Paul to come as often as they wanted to, just to sort of be in fellowship, to draw distinctions between their strategies and ideas and those of their competitors, to keep their name in front of the public. And we intend to do that again in the upcoming cycle. So I want to tell you and tell our listeners on KFAI and at Black Press USA and at our website, our Facebook page, that on Mondays between now and the election, we'll be hosting sort of an open mic for candidates for office in Minneapolis and St. Paul. So I want to invite you both, invite your competition as well. And our intent is simply to make it easy and desirable and exciting for people to get close to you and you to get close to people on a regular basis. I want you to be aware of that. So that'll be our live webcast every Monday between now and the election. And you are both invited to be there as often as you wish, with the expectation that you're trying to get people to support your campaign and you're trying to educate our people about our opportunity and our obligations as citizens.
What time now?
It's going to be every day at 1 o'clock. I'm on at 1 every day. And I'll send a standing link, and you're welcome to join anytime that you're able to.
Oh,
I'd
awesome.
love to have you share with your followers, your supporters, and create a robust conversation. Our goal really is to have our community feel welcome to the discussion. Too often, we feel it's somebody else's business,
That's
or
right.
that the issues being discussed are too complicated, too difficult, things that we're not expected to know about. And if we do know about them, we're often discouraged by the arrogance and aloofness of the establishment of the institutions that tend to minimize or marginalize our point of view. And as a communicator and as a Black man, I'm saying no more. I have platforms, this being one of them, our social media pages, our newspaper, and other events. And our objective is to change the narrative, to have our community feel like and know that we, in fact, are the owners of the enterprise of governance. And we've got both an obligation and an opportunity to do that. So I want to make that invitation and invite you both to that. I wanted to ask you both about this whole question of transitioning. What goes in your minds if you decide to leave a position? It means that it sets in motion more things. Tony's leaving, setting in motion your action, Rena. Ryan Winkler, I think, see, I don't know if what the conditions are that invited you to the table for the county attorney race. It's not exactly the same, I don't think. But when you move, and as you move, it creates space downstream from you. How do you think about that? How does it go into your calculus of what to do as a politician? Ryan Winkler, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I feel a responsibility to look after what's coming behind me. And as a legislator, as a legislative leader, I know that we have a great amount of talented public servants coming up in their first, second, and third terms who are ready to take over leadership in the Minnesota House, ready to step up and really represent Minnesota well. We've had a huge influx of, or comparatively anyway, of people of diverse backgrounds coming into the Minnesota House on the DFL side. And I don't need to hold on to that space any longer than necessary. And I think looking for who's going to follow me in my district is important, but also who's ready to be a leader in the Minnesota House is important. And I'm very confident that we've got great people coming up. I think Rena would probably agree with that. And they're ready to step in. They don't need us around after 12 years anymore.
Talk about your district, the demographics, and the likelihood of change. What about that?
Well, first of all, we don't know what our districts are going to be because they're going to be redrawn because of the 10-year redistricting that's coming out on February 15th. The Minnesota Supreme Court will essentially redraw all of our legislative districts. In my area, we have a strong DFL majority. And so whoever represents my area will be a DFLer. And we have a diverse community that's changing over time. And St. Louis Park, in a lot of ways, is the most integrated city in the state, with people in schools and jobs and housing that are more mixed up altogether than in a lot of other places. So I have a lot of confidence that St. Louis Park will produce a great state representative. It has a good tradition of doing that. And I feel very confident that we'll have good representation and in Golden Valley as well.
Were you around when Bob Lewis was a senator in St. Louis Park?
No, that's before my time.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. Bob Lewis. Did you know Bob Lewis, Rena?
I did not know.
Dr. Bob Lewis, black dentist, who was St. Louis Park's senator to the state senate, and that was progressive and interesting. So I don't know if it suggests that could happen again. The demographics have changed substantially, and your district, Representative Winkler, is one that could conceivably present a person of color to follow you if in the election. What about your thoughts? How do you, Rena, look at downstream ensuring that your movement, should you get elected, keeps the work alive and keeps the community on a path of progress? How do you think about that, and what do you say to yourself and to your constituents in your campaign?
Well, one of the things that I can say that I'm proud of, that I have consistently done, like each year that I have ran for office, and as it got less competitive, has made it easier for me to bring in folks from the community to be a part of my campaign, to be that campaign manager, to be that media person or that outreach person, to get them, connected to the political process, recognizing and valuing that your voice is your vote is your voice. How you see the world and how you engage in the world is important. And so, and part of me doing that was to create a process, right, where folks from my community is connected to the process. They know other elected officials. They are engaged. Because as Ryan said earlier, everything is about relationships. Everything is about relationship. Trust is really important. And so how folks from my community can be a part of that process, as diverse as my community has been as diverse as I have tried to engage people in this process. And so, right now I believe it's 3 candidates running for my seat. Well, the seat that I hold is not my seat. The seat that I hold right now, there's 3 individuals who's running from that seat. I do have better relationship with one more than the others. And that's important because when I run hard. I run hard and I engage people in the process, not just in the community process, but the legislative process. So it's really important to me that whoever followed me from this community that I believe are often left behind, right? That we don't invest enough in St. Paul. I don't know if Ryan knows this, but every time we say Minneapolis, I'm like, what about St. Paul? Right? We, don't leave St. Paul behind here. Don't leave District 65 behind. And so it is important to me that they are like highly engaged, and I can see that the work is there, that they are moving, and they're going to be including folks in what that looks like. On a part as me being chair of Ways and Means, one of the comforts that I get by stepping into this new opportunity to run for Ramsey County Commissioner, because as you know, there was some time within my tenure, I was like the only Black legislator in the Minnesota House in the body of 134, right? Which means that some days, most days, that I was seeing the world different, whether they were solutions of the problems. And right now, there are 8 Black legislators in the Minnesota House, with 2 in the Senate, and maybe about 25 or so legislators of color. And that brings me a lot of joy, but it also brings me relief that I can leave this body in transition from the House to the county and community. And that I know there's a body of legislators that's going to bring those worldviews, those perspectives, those insight from their community into the legislative body to run policies that's going to benefit the diversity that we see in the state of Minnesota. And that's important, that we have that representation of voices, diverse voices included in that decision-making process.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane, having a great conversation with two public servants. Ryan Winkler serves in the Minnesota House of Representatives representing St. Louis Park, and Representative Rena Moran serving the Frogtown neighborhood, District 65.
The historical Rondo community, too.
And historical Rondo community in St. Paul, District 65A, isn't it? Is it A?
Yes, it is.
65A. And both have announced their candidacies for county level work. Ryan Winkler wants to be the county attorney in Hennepin County, and Rena Moran wants to be a member of the county board in Ramsey County in Greater St. Paul, or that might not be the right description, Rena, but we're glad to have you both here. And, this is a great conversation. Again, we intend to keep the political discussion alive between now and the election because we think it's important. We think it's important to bring the voices of our people. I want to focus for the last few minutes of your visit with me today on the current emotional issues that I opened up with. How do we, Ryan Winkler, tell me what you know as you're watching this story unfold about Amir Locke, his death. Just as an observer, what are you seeing that's happening right? What's happening wrong in the public handling, in the official handling of this problem, the crisis, starting with the procedure of the police department with the no-knock warrant? What are your thoughts on it? As you're watching the news and monitoring this, and as part of your consideration about legislation about public safety, what goes through your mind? What do you want to say to people?
One of the, I think, key things that I've noticed is that St. Paul hasn't done a no-knock warrant since 2016, which tells me that it is not a necessary tool of law enforcement. There may be cases or instances where you want to keep it available, but I think that police departments should have to demonstrate to a judge that it's more dangerous to not do the no-knock than it is to do one, and that's a hard burden to overcome. I think that's a positive. I think the fact that automatically the county attorney worked with the attorney general to oversee the investigation of the officer's action after the no-knock warrant happened is a positive. I think that level of partnership and removal to some degree of the county attorney's conflict in investigating that shooting is a positive. I think that has been a result of activists in the community speaking out on that issue over the last several years. I think but it's hard to find a lot of positives. I mean, you ask, like, I can look for them, but I guess I will say that the St. Paul police seem to have conducted a very thorough and careful investigation into the underlying murder that led to this shooting of Amir Locke, the killing of Amir Locke. So that's another positive. What I see as the real negative is a huge disconnect between what leaders in Minneapolis are saying and what the Minneapolis Police Department is doing. The number of no-knock warrants that have been routinely used by Minneapolis, even after there was a so-called ban on them in the city, shows, to me, it shows all the good reasons why people don't trust leadership and have distrust of MPD, because that's not acceptable. There has to be somebody responsible for the failure to carry out this policy to stop no-knock warrants from happening. And if city leaders and law enforcement have given the community reason to distrust them, and we don't have a viable alternative at a time when crime is on the rise, we're in a really challenging and difficult situation. Because we right now don't have a lot of alternatives. We're building them at the community level. We're seeing organizations like A Mother's Love, where we push for peace, trying to fill in some of those gaps, right, and trying to be a bridge. But that's not a replacement for an effective, well-run, professional, community service-oriented police department. Mm-hmm. And Minneapolis has been missing that for a long time. And so, to me, that in addition just to the tragic loss of Amir Locke's life, I think the gap between what our cities should expect to have in a police department and in civic leaders, city leaders, and what we're getting is really big. And if the alternative is just abolish, then we're not getting anywhere anyway either. So we've got to figure out a way to come together, and I'm hoping that that's what we see come out of this.
Rena, what are your thoughts? I know my perception of St. Paul's Police Department, for example, is that I hear reports and see reports, read reports that call the department more connected, more engaging, and more respected by the residents of the community. But I also hear reports that are very caustic and that paint a different picture of how effective and how what's the right word, empathetic those officers are in the discharge of their responsibility for being peacekeepers or law enforcement officers. What's your assessment, and how do you generally look at how we either have succeeded or failed in Minneapolis in this story around Amir Locke, given the context of Philando Castile and Jamar Clark and other things from around the country that are involved with how the country is feeling about what we have been describing as over aggressive and unfair policing against Black people?
Yeah. So I just liked how you described St. Paul. You used the word peacekeeper, law enforcement. Those are two different narratives. If you see yourself as a peacekeeper or you see yourself as a law enforcement, there's different connotations for how you show up, for one, in my mind. And so here in St. Paul, when we look at, and you're right, in St. Paul has not done no knock one since 2016 because they saw it as a high risk, right? I hear Minneapolis doing it like 11 a week or whatever. I mean, it's a really high number of what they're doing. And Chief Todd Axel here in St. Paul has been our chief, who's currently retiring, but he has been what I would call a community servant leader, right? He's in the community. His work is done through a partnership with community. You know, when we had to bring in the community ambassadors because our youth was downtown St. Paul on Fifth Avenue, just making a racket at the school, you know, instead of them picking up the youth and taking them to detention, he said, why don't we get community members to step in, have these conversations with them and pull them back in and maybe connect them to some other resources, right? When the businesses down there was calling, you know, holy, no, come and get these kids and arrest them, they decided that we would find a way to give them an internship into those businesses or become workers in those businesses. And then the businesses became the strongest advocate of how to deal with these young people. And so to me, it's a leadership thing. You have to be very clear about the type of leadership that you are going to create, enforce, and allow to happen. And so for Minneapolis, who seems to have this mentality around aggression and see themselves as, you know, someone who's there to police the community, who sees themselves as law enforcers instead of seeing themselves being connected to a community of people, right, who are as human as they are. This is what shows up. What we continue to see show up with police officers who are coming in from across the state to come into a Minneapolis where the disconnect, maybe their fears and their feelings and thoughts are disconnected, right? Maybe it's their training, but whatever it may be, there's a disconnect from the top about how if that's the mayor, if that was the city council, whoever that person is, you know, what they want and expect from a police chief, for the law enforcement, has to be very clear about who they are and how they need to do their work as police officers, what we call peace officers. Maybe sometimes it's just a matter of changing the name that we are calling you or calling that individual, right? So I don't have the answers for Minneapolis. But what I can say is Minneapolis needs to come over here and have some conversation with St. Paul Department and Chief Todd Axel about other ways that they can do their work and still keep a community safe. And I'm no way am I saying Minneapolis, I mean St. Paul was without crime. No way am I saying that.
Right, right.
But there are lessons that can be learned from here.
One of the arguments that's come out is a request that the governor act to ban the no-knock warrant. I think the governor said he doesn't have the authority to make that kind of determination. It's not his not in his wheelhouse to be able to order the different agencies throughout the state to do that. But you all and the governor are looking at a almost $8 billion surplus right now. And the question is, how will that money be used? How much of it will go into creating different ways to engage people in the community around the area of both public safety, but the things that are attendant to the broad and pervasive disparities that erupt in the form of behaviors that really are destructive to the individuals and to the communities that they are in. And Representative Winkler, you mentioned a couple of organizations like A Mother's Love, I think you mentioned, and another like that. These are organizations that in years past have had skepticism around them. The skepticism has not been from within the Black community so much, but from within a system, and I call it, a white governance system or social structure that tended to always be suspect of ideas and leadership, and particularly a call for resources that came out of the Black community. From my side, as a journalist and as a member of the Black community, Representative Moran and Representative Winkler, I've always written and said that too often Black people get the misery and white people get the money, that we use the treasury of city, county, the state to make life better, palatable for the public at large. Public at large is a euphemism for white people, because in Minnesota, while we have one of the most educated publics at large, for example, we have the worst condition for educational outcomes for Black and brown people. So there's a pattern and a process and a system that continues to marginalize and to keep suppressed the capacity to develop and heal from within the Black community. And I say all this to say that while we're looking at an $8 billion surplus, is there an opportunity? What is your thought about how and what the state government can do to support innovation, engagement, hiring, jobs, wealth creation, movement of money, and the repositioning of our community as not the problem, but the opportunity? How do we change the narrative so that we see ourselves differently, and so that the state sees us differently, and seeing us differently invests properly and differently? Representative Winkler, what do you think?
I first of all agree with your general assessment of the political dynamics. And I think it's generally true. A prosperous community tends to not have a crime problem. If you look at the number of felonies coming through Hennepin County, something like 80 to 85% of people qualify for a public defender, which means they are extremely low income. So what does that say about what we're doing with a criminal justice response to a problem of intentionally, in many cases, denied opportunity? And what are we going to do to break down structures that are actually designed to keep people from fulfilling their full opportunity? It starts probably with redlining. And there's a continued legacy of that, when how banks loan money and who owns the homes that people are living in, and whether they have access to the kind of credits in order to be able to buy it, whether there's what the barriers are. Where are we investing for small business generation and growth? When I talk to city leaders, I ask them about that when we're talking about public safety, because people, if they are able to build wealth and are able to pass something along to their kids, are anchors of a community that's moving in the right direction. And for way too long, Minnesota has worked very well for the vast majority, and not very well at all for a minority of the population, which is now growing substantially. And we're seeing that play out. We're seeing how our level of attention to the white community yielded great success, but as the state becomes more diverse, we have not figured out how to widen the circle. As somebody who is in the circle myself, and as an establishment white leader in Minnesota, I see my role is to show up and listen and hear what the challenges are, what the opportunities are, and then help figure out how to get resources into those solutions. I can't promise it, right? I live in a political environment in which we've got competing ideas and a different political party and lots of needs. But I can commit to trying to be a person who is bridging resources into what the community is saying it needs, and can use my position in that way. And to me, it's as simple as getting to know you. If you don't know your neighbors, you cannot love your neighbors. If you don't love your neighbors, we are not in a community together. We are not moving upwards together. And that's, to me, where it starts at a foundational level. Just showing up and listening, and then trying to figure out how to solve problems together.
Rena Moran, how do we move the money into our community and do that in a way that doesn't bring with it a scowling backlash from white people who feel like it's okay for us to stay in a condition of perpetual poverty, need, and genuflecting to the brilliance of white people, and in doubt of our own capacity, our own genius? How do we do that?
You just said it all, Al. In 2020, we declared racism a public health crisis. Mm-hmm. Along with myself and Representative Ruth Richardson, we chaired the Select Committee on Racial Justice. From that, we brought out 82 recommendations. From that, we came into a 2021 session leading from a lens of equity. I clearly, as Chair of Ways and Means, said to all the chairs in the committee that when you come to my committee with your supplemental budget, you have to be able to tell me how you are working to reduce the disparities, how you are investing into those communities, right? For the no-knock bill, that doesn't cost any money. That's just policy, right, Ryan? No dollars attached to that. Just right. And I know in the Minnesota House by next week, you will see that bill moving out of committee to the floor, waiting on the Republicans to do the same thing in the Senate. That's a priority for us in the House. And so what I have seen, Al, is that, all the things that you say, that the distrust about listening to our community who's been impacted by these systems, it is, hundreds of years of this type of behavior and mindset, right? To change the mindset of people to believe that we are brilliant. We have solutions for our community. It's hard for them to see us as Black legislators and legislators of color, to believe that we have the answers, that we bring the answers and the solutions from our community into that body. And if we say, if we're sharing with you that this is what we believe is going to work, and we have to invest back into those communities that historically have not been invested in, mm-hmm. We have to lead that way. We have to fight that way. We have to do that if we want to see a different results that we have been seeing. And clearly, what has happened in the past is a byproduct of where we are today. It's not what somebody done yesterday. It's what we continue to do today. And so just continue for us in the House to do our work through a race equity lens. I can't do it no other way. I see no other way to do it, and to bring recognizing that it's race that's got us here, from slavery to whatever, mm-hmm. got us here. And so now we can't say, oh, we don't need to talk about race. It's another problem. No, recognizing that race matters, only thing that's going to get us out of here. We got to be intentional about those solutions. We're pushing that in the House. I know our United Black Legislative Caucus are pushing it. We're bringing the experience and the lived experience and some history and some education, building a relationship and the knowledge that we need to do to help inform a body who have often not taken the time to dig deep to get to know, these problems that historically got us in this place, but also the solutions that we bring, that we feel, that the community feel that's going to make things better. But we cannot do it. Government cannot do it from the Capitol. We have to invest in these organizations that are embedded in our community, that is doing the transformational work, that is doing the hard work to create the change. That is what's going to make a difference. And we have to trust that without being so cumbersome and put all types of roadblocks in the way to getting often the little dollars that we're asking for. And we have to invest more than 1 year. If we're going to have an impact and see change happen, all the research and data tell us that you have to invest from 3 to 5 years to begin to see a change in behavior and opportunities and possibilities.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. I've had a lively hour of discussion with State Representative Ryan Winkler and State Representative Rena Moran. Both have determined and decided to announce that they are seeking county offices. Ryan Winkler as the county attorney for Hennepin County, where Minneapolis is, and Representative Moran for the county board in Ramsey County, St. Paul State Capitol. And I thank them both for being here. I'm going to ask you both to take the last minute or so here to restate the value proposition. I want people to know that you're a candidate and you can ask people to support your vision, your work. I'll say that we'll be inviting all of your opponents as well over the course of the political season, because we want to have a rich and robust, broad conversations, different points of view, all for the aim of creating the best informed voter in all of us. So Ryan Winkler, first you, just take the 60-second invitation for people to support you.
Well, thank you, Al, for the conversation. And it's a lot of fun for me just to sit and listen to you and Rena have a conversation too. I think what I've seen in my time at the state capitol is that who shows up are the people who make decisions. And the difference between having one Black House member and having 8 and having a much more diverse House of Representatives means that the conversation has changed. The conversation changes based on who shows up and who turns out and who is organized. And that's what we need to see happen in this community. I run for Hennepin County Attorney because I believe in partnerships. I believe in engagement. I believe in bringing all voices to the table and showing how an office like County Attorney, which is responsible for prosecuting crime, can be of value to our communities, not as an outside force that is going to force something down on families and communities, but as a partner in helping keep our communities safe and moving them towards justice. The County Attorney, the prosecutor, is a minister of justice under the lawyer's ethical standards. And that means not just trying to lock up as many people as possible, but making our communities safer, stronger, and more equitable. And as a partner in this community and with every community in Hennepin County, I think we can make this terrible time we're in much better. I think we have it within us to create the kind of city, the kind of county, and the kind of community that we all believe in, that we all want to live in.
Rena Moran, 60 seconds or so.
So I am still that mother of 7 kids with 4 sons and 3 daughters who came here and decided that it was important that I connect to my neighbors and get to know each other. And from that, got engaged in, buying a home here, looking at the right light rail and how the light rails will impact not only me, but the elders in my community, and recognizing that there was laws and policies and practices that continue to leave us out of the process, and decided one day that she wanted to run for state representative so that I could be a part of creating the laws and policies that are fair and just. And I've done that. I have enjoyed it, and I recognize the privilege of doing that. And now I'm ready to come home into the community. There's an opportunity for that to happen, and I'm ready to bring the knowledge, the relationships, the work around homelessness, to transitional housing, to home ownership, to look at keeping our Black families together. I introduced the African American Family Preservation Act. Being connected to your family, having kids connected is important to me. It's important to our community. I want to continue to do that. I want to look at food insecurity and making sure that we are able to feed our kids. I'm a servant leader. So I believe that it is the responsibility of the government to take care of folks who are down and out so they can lift themselves back up to take care of themselves. That's the work.
We got to leave it right there.
I'm excited.
Listen, we're out of time.
Excited.
It's 2:00. I'm
All
Al
right.
McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. Thanks to Rena Moran. Thanks to Ryan Winkler. And thank you for listening and viewing. Again, we'll be doing this all the time between now and the election. Stay connected.